So first, welcome everyone to the 15th CARE conference. We've been holding these for a long time, and there's one person sitting in the back corner, Kirk, who's come to all 15 of these conferences, needs to be mentioned for his longevity, apart from anything else. But thank you all for coming to this conference. There's so many people to thank. I'm going to thank a few. In fact, I'm going to thank four. There's too many people to thank. Of course, there's the panelists, the moderators, there's the speakers, and of course, these are the people that, of course, we genuinely and obviously thank. But there's so many people that have helped us over the last 3 years to put this conference together, suggesting names, how we might coordinate panels, etc. So thank you to everybody. In particular, however, I want to thank Laurie, who's sneaking along the back there. Who you all know puts this conference together. You know, I come up with a few ideas here and there, but she's usually a step way ahead of me. She really is fabulous. I want to talk briefly about how this conference started, and this allows me to thank the three key people for the conference. The conference started 3 years ago at this conference when Mike Ishlin suggested that we might have a conference on how research could be relevant, how we could make research more relevant, or perhaps even should research be relevant, because some people think maybe that's not what our role is, that perhaps we should be doing research more at a 30,000 feet level, and practical relevance isn't necessarily that important. So Michael suggested that as a young faculty member, it would be great for him if we could have a conference such as this. This is 3 years ago. And over a period of probably the next 6 to 12 months, we discussed ideas among the two of us and with a lot of other people. And then Mike suggested that we bring Ed DeHaan and Jeff Hales on board. And the four of us have put this conference together, and I think you'll agree that these guys have done a fabulous job. I'm really looking forward to the next day and a half, and I hope you are too. So big thanks to Mike, Ed, and Jeff, and you'll hear more from them over the next day and a half. I also would like to thank our sponsors. Where is George? George Worthman, who's in the other back corner, who sponsored this conference for the last 13 years very generously, and we really appreciate it. George from Cambridge Business Publishers. And of course, thank you, George. And I must thank the University of Notre Dame. I'm here representing the University of Notre Dame, but the university is very generous in their support of this conference, and I need to recognise them, even though in some odd sense I'm perhaps recognising my own institution. So I'd like to talk very briefly about what CARE's about, and in order to do that I'm going to simply read from our publicity bulletin. The reason for this is we spent a lot of time, we, that being Laurie and me, Laurie first, me next, we put a lot of time into summarising what we do. The first and new initiative that I want to talk about is we have a CARE Scholars Program. We don't have a PhD program, as most of you know, and we're aware that we're not contributing on that dimension. So what we've recently initiated is a program where we invite PhD students from other universities who happen to have interests that mesh very closely with ours at the University of Notre Dame. And this, we hope, is good for them. It's good for us, obviously, because we have additional colleagues. These three current scholars are in the room. I'd like to introduce them. Martin Capons from Tilburg University, Marcel Teen from Erasmus, and Shauna Asper from Alabama. It's a new program. We're excited about it. The dean's supporting us, which is extremely important. And these guys have been great, and we think they will be from here on in. The reason I talk about it now is that if you know of people that fit into this kind of category, mould, then please let us know. We fortunately have funds to support this pretty generously, and so we'd like to expand it if we can. The second thing we do, and actually my notes have just died on my computer, it's timed out, so give me a second to get them back up. Second thing, let me just talk about the CARE conferences. The CARE conferences have actually been going since 2002. The first two conferences were first sponsored by Ohio State and second by the University of Southern California. And then the University of Notre Dame took them over in 2006. We've had 13 conferences at the University of Notre Dame. And here are the topics. Research, teaching and practice of financial statement analysis and valuation, the quality of corporate financial statements, cross-border valuation issues, empirical research methods, forecasting firm and industry fundamentals, accounting for uncertainty and risk, the impact of the explosion of new information on capital markets, big data, investing in developing capital markets, fraud, and accounting for the macroeconomy. This conference, as you know, is on regulation and evidence-based regulation. The conference has been held all around the world, starting in Atlanta. We've been in London twice at the booth and at LBS. Singapore, Napa, been in New York twice. DC, here, 3 times, this is the 4th. Miami and Hong Kong. Now, the aim of these conferences, the conferences have 2 key goals, and I want to read them. First of all, to strengthen the links between people who research and teach economics, finance and accounting, and those who practice. And second, to encourage younger academics, and look around the audience, almost everyone's younger than me, but many of the people could be my children. To encourage younger academics to pursue a research agenda that is most relevant to the practice of economics, finance, accounting and law, and hence, this is the important part, relevant in the classroom. With these goals in mind, we invite highly informed, very influential, sometimes provocative speakers. And just briefly, before I hand over to Mike, I want to mention the 2020 conference. It's already in the planning stages, and I mention it now for a couple of reasons. First of all, you might mark it in your calendar. It's July 9 to 12, 2020. The theme of that conference is accounting for sustainability and responsible investing. Symbolically, the conference will be held on Heron Island, off the Queensland coast on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. The aim of the conference is to bring together accountants, law professionals, lawmakers, standard setters, economists, investors, and particularly scientists, as well as academics from the sciences, accounting, finance, law, and economics. As with all of the CARE conferences, the main goal will be to set a research agenda for many of the younger academics, which will address key issues related to accounting for sustainability and responsible investing. So I hope you will put June, did I say July? June, 9 to 12 in your calendar. I think we'll have a great conference. We're bringing together people from many, many different disciplines to talk about this issue of accounting for sustainability and the importance or what happens if we in fact take a responsible investing approach. So I don't want to say any more. My main goal was to thank everybody and to introduce CARE. Now I'd like to hand over to Mike, who spearheaded this entire conference from 3 years ago, and Mike will introduce the rest of the conference. Thanks, Mike.
All right, so thanks to all of you for coming. I also want to give a special thanks to Peter and CARE for putting this conference on. As Peter mentioned, the initial seeds of this conference started over 3 years ago now with a conversation that I remember having with him at the Minnesota Empirical Accounting Conference. Peter and I worked on kind of back and forth whether it was viable for a few months, And then we made what I think was the most critical decision in the whole planning process, which was to get Ed DeHaan and Jeff Hales to come on board the conference committee, as they were both instrumental in turning that initial idea into what you're going to see here over the next day and a half. So I want to echo Peter's thanks to the two of them for all the time they've dedicated to the conference. CARE and the CARE conference, as many of you know, is known for bringing in people from the real world with real world experiences to talk to academics about those experiences in the goal of generating new research ideas for the academics in the audience. And we're not going to do anything different from that this year. What I think we are going to do a little bit different is really try to make a conceited effort to have those new research ideas be things that are of interest not only to academics and the journals, but also to regulators, standard setters, practitioners, investors, auditors, et cetera. And to that end, we have organized a set of panels under the broad theme of financial reporting regulation, as we think that as accountants, we may have a competitive advantage to produce some practice-relevant research in that area. The topics of the panels are broad and wide, and you'll hear a little bit from a number of different stakeholders. And we also have a couple of panels where we've asked business school deans and journal editors to discuss potential impediments and appetite for this kind of research. Now, at the end of the day, we believe that if our research is not relevant to people outside of the ivory towers of academia, then not only are we selling ourselves short, but we're potentially putting in jeopardy the need for PhD-trained accounting faculty. Now, that's not to say that we should become consultants to corporations or special interest groups, as I think that neutrality in the work that we do is a characteristic that makes it incredibly unique and valuable to society. And it's also not to say that some of the work we do doesn't already have an impact in the broader world. But hopefully, over the next 2 days, we can hear some things from some people that help tighten those links between our research and the broader world of financial reporting regulation. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and jump into the first session. And if you look at your agenda, you'll see that the first session is supposed to be a keynote address by Christine Bodison from the FASB. Unfortunately, Christine is unable to be here. She broke her leg earlier this week and is unable to travel. But fortunately, when you take 3 years to plan a conference, you're able to build in contingencies for things like this. And so we already had another board member from the FASB on the agenda, Hal Schrader, who has graciously agreed to pinch hit in Christine's absence.